All right, welcome to another episode of the Growth Compass, where we look for direction in the ocean of business growth opportunities. Before we get started with Louis today, I'd like to shout out our sponsor, Senders. They do cold email deliverability. So personally, I came across Senders because I run growth for a coffee company here, local to Philadelphia. We started scaling our mass emailing very far last year. And I'm sure, like most of you listening, and maybe Lewis, I guess we'll find out, deliverability plummeted. Tried to figure it out myself, found out that it was extremely complicated. So I came across Senders and I loved what they did so much that I asked them to sponsor this podcast and they said yes. So if anyone out there is listening and you're ready to do cold email correctly, you can hit me up in the email address in the show notes and we'll get you set up correctly. And now to introduce our guest for today, Louis. Just a short introduction. What's going on, Louis?
Blake, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be here. I, short introduction, I run a business called Orbit Marketing. We help businesses start email newsletters. That's like the very short introduction. I can expand more on other projects, other background, but day to day, at this present moment, and for the foreseeable, that is the focus.
Awesome. And you are in Arizona.
I am.
So how did you end up there? Because I saw a couple different locations on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, the my business partner Sean wanted to move to Arizona. And so when we first started, it was our parent company, sister company, whatever you want to call it. It's called Orbit Metrics. It is IT consulting, business intelligence, analytics, data, things like that. Custom software development related to data applications would be the skinniest way to describe it. We
Nice.
moved to Arizona together to get that business started. And then I've just kind of stayed more or less. There's a lot more to that story, but it's not a short story. And
Yeah, sure.
anyway, my business partner lives out here, so it's a good place to be for getting work done.
Awesome. Where were you beforehand? Were you even in the area? Did you grow up
My
somewhere
family is from Las
far away?
Vegas,
Great. Okay.
so it's close to home.
Great. Cool, man. Well, mainly what I've seen is what you've talked about, which is the marketing company and the data company. So I'd first like to, because of personal interests of mine, dive into your email marketing company because a lot of your language is around list building and owning kind of everything that you put out and having control over how you grow your audience and stuff like that. So I'm curious first how you even got into that space because I'm pretty sure you studied something more technical than that. So I'm just curious how that happened for you.
I studied computer science in school in terms
Cool.
of the actual degree I got, right? The major. And the main thing I studied during my college years, but outside of the classroom, was marketing and entrepreneurship. And I don't know why that's kind of what became like the main interest, but I just, you know, wanted to be in, I knew very early in college that I wanted to be like an entrepreneur when I graduated. And I felt like the most direct path to being there was through marketing. And so that's why I just became interested in that. Like I do obviously have like a very strong passion for the actual domain, but it was also like when you have a strong why, it doesn't really matter what it is you feel like you need to do. If it's aligned with the why, then you're like, yeah, I'll do it. Right. If it's like I have to, that's why so many entrepreneurs are like, if they believe that, let's say something arbitrary and unpleasant like a cold plunge, like let's say they're really bought in to being an entrepreneur and someone convinces them that this thing makes them closer to their goal, then that thing suddenly becomes pleasant or suddenly becomes fascinating. So I think to some extent that's how marketing felt. I was like, okay, this feels like a path towards my goal. So now let me just be interested in that for that reason. So that's part of it. And then in terms of career opportunities, so after school, I was pretty indecisive. I was like, I want to start a business, but like what or why? And nothing really came to me. I didn't have that eureka moment. And so the eureka moment was, let's just go get busy, where it's like the best way to get lucky is to like just do things, to have activity.
Yeah, yeah.
Like luck doesn't just, come find you if you're hard to find. It's a lot easier to find you if you're out and about, meeting people, doing things, shaking hands, whatever. And so I decided the industry I wanted to work in was crypto. That's what I had the most interest in 2021 when I graduated school. A lot of passion
Wow.
specifically for Bitcoin. Yeah. And so I
Okay.
got a call from a friend who was going to drop out of college to work at Bitcoin Magazine in Nashville, and he knew that I hadn't yet made any plans for where I was going to live or what I wanted to do yet. So I said, hey, I'm moving to Nashville. You like Bitcoin? If you want to be my roommate, that could be fun. And so I said, sure. And so I drove my car from Las Vegas to Nashville, moved in with him. And then within a few weeks, I was also working at Bitcoin Magazine. And then a few weeks after that, not a few weeks, I mean, honestly, kind of a few weeks. Within a few months, I had gotten a different job working for Anthony Pompliano, and who goes by the name Pomp in the crypto world or financial world, and worked for him for almost a year. And then a longtime best friend asked me if I wanted to help him start and grow Orbit Metrics, which I said yes to. And so then I left that job with Pomp to help build Orbit Metrics with longtime best friend, and then from home, from childhood. And then we moved to Arizona to get the business off the ground. And then about a year in to that, we wanted to launch. So the product that we sell at Orbit Marketing is, Orbit Metrics is, again, price is relative, but it's a lot of people would consider a higher ticket purchase. It's very custom. It's not, we don't make the same thing. People need data infrastructure and they need like
Sure,
advanced
sure.
BI and dashboards and data warehouses. You have to kind of say like, well, what are your marketing channels? It's custom, so it's expensive, and it's also very, very high trust, right? It's like, I'm going to take ownership for the source of truth for your business's information. Like, you're going to make decisions based on what I do for you. And that
Yeah, yeah.
requires a very high level of trust. And so I wanted to also launch something, and it's kind of upstream of revenue, right? It's like, if I make your data more organized, then you'll have better dashboards, which will give you better information, which will allow you to make better decisions, and therefore you'll make more money. As a marketing service is like, we're going to do this thing and it's going to make you more money. So I wanted to launch something, another offer to sell that was faster. So like, maybe with the data company, you meet someone, you have a call once every 3 months for 9 months, and then they're finally ready to get started. Whereas the newsletter, someone's like, oh, I should have a newsletter, shouldn't I? So yeah, you should. And obviously, like, I'm a bit more discerning than that, but
Yeah.
every business should have some presence over email. And like, do you have a list? Are you keeping in touch with your list? Are you staying top of mind with your list? Are you nurturing your list? And so it's something that they can, and impulsively is not a bad word, but something that they can just say, yes, I know I need this. There's no one I have to talk to. Let's just get started. Let's try this for 3 months and see what happens. So that business is very quick, right? Lots of sales all the time, while the big data contracts have their slow burn of like
Sure, sure.
decision by committee and approvals. And so the background and insight I had was all the experiences combined, right? Everything was relevant. I started a Substack of my own in 2020. So I had my own
Yeah, I saw
newsletter for a
that.
year that I read every week, which was very, very powerful in terms of like, I met so many people who like wanted to keep in touch with me and I wanted to keep in touch with. And I wasn't a big social media person. And so email is like just a great way to do that. And then also just at those jobs with, Anthony Pompliano and with Bitcoin Magazine,
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
companies that are, companies, organizations, people where email marketing is a very important thing, very important part of their funnel, if you want to call it a funnel, right? So like Anthony, he's one of the biggest creators on Substack. If you go to like finance top charts on Substack, you're going to see, the Pomp newsletter or the Pomp letter. And it's no secret that like his newsletter is obviously very powerful. And then Bitcoin Magazine obviously has their publisher. So email being an online publication, email is where you distribute a lot of the media that you produce. And I worked on the growth marketing side for them. So I was involved with a lot of their email projects. So kind of all of those power of newsletters within my own experience and seeing it firsthand at some of the jobs I had. And then also just working at Orbit Metrics, always wanting to start a newsletter, never getting around to it, kind of had the insight, if you want to call it an insight, that's like, everyone wants a newsletter, everyone's too busy to do it. So this kind of makes sense as a gap in the market. I'm not the only one providing the service, but there's infinite need for it, like truly, right?
Yeah. Man, that was exquisite. I have four very specific questions based on that rundown. So thank you for doing that. And the first one goes back to that initial experience with the crypto industry. So you were in it for about 2 years. You got, pretty substantial experience. What's your, the short of it, your opinion of it now, your opinion after working in it, about its application in the future and also like the people in the space, I would say. Curious about that.
Yeah, industries are big, right? It's like, I try to, I feel like that was a very, and I don't want to get political, but I feel like a very Kamala Harris line. Industries are big, right? It's like, industries are big, but no, like there's, I don't know, like 100,000 people, 1 million people that work in crypto. I have no idea. There's a lot of
Gotcha.
people. So
Okay.
to like
So
generalize
you're
and
a
be like, yeah, the
corner of
people
the
are smart, the
universe
people are
then, yeah.
dumb. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
The what I will say is, so I graduated college May of 2021. Within a month of graduating, I went to the Bitcoin
congrats.
conference as a thank you, as a way to suss out. I was like, I think I want to work in. It's like if I don't have a business I want to start, I think I want to work in crypto. So I'm gonna go to this
Cool.
conference to see like what these people are like. And largely, I was like, I like these people. Like they're very. This is obviously now the industry's big, like I said, and so crypto, like any other industry, it needs traditional functions. It's like if you are a crypto company with 500 employees, you need an HR person, like to just handle things. And so it's like, are crypto HR people any different than regular HR people? Probably like somewhat, but at the time,
Okay, yeah,
especially the
yeah.
crypto startups have a very the Bitcoin startups especially have like a very libertarian bent. So for example, I never got the COVID shots, I never got any of the vaccines, and the crypto industry in 2021 were the types of companies that didn't care. Right, that was not a requirement of employment at the crypto companies because they're very libertarian and very independent thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
That was at the time. Modern day, my pontification about the future of the industry is probably not going to be like that insightful because I've been a bit
Yeah, I mean
removed
just
from
your
it.
opinion, you know.
I still think that, Bitcoin specifically is a force for good. It's like something humanity should have the option to have a sovereign, self-sovereign, why am I like a self-sovereign way to store wealth. Like doesn't require like if we want to just have this kind of global consensus of like an additional again, this is the basics of the technology, right? A distributed ledger, like a globally shared, permissionless distributed ledger of and like what do those words mean, right? Distributed meaning like spread throughout the world and ledger meaning like a record, a book, not a book, a my phone has overheated. It's Arizona.
No worries.
Come on. Um,
No worries. You can just
how
switch
do
back.
I yeah, let me see. Hopefully my computer's not next. It's getting some serious direct sunlight, but
It
let's
does
see.
look very nice out there. Yeah, I'll just
Yeah,
make
dude,
a
it's
note
like
about
90
editing.
degrees.
Do you like
Well, should we
cube
stop this
setting?
recording and start another recording? Because I can't switch cameras
Oh, you
during the
can't?
recording. I'd have to stop, not during recording. I use
Sure.
Riverside as
Then
well for
let's.
my show. So
Well,
we'll
then yeah.
pause
What
and
would
then
you suggest then?
we just
Stop.
pause the recording and or stop the recording and
Okay.
start a new one.
Great.
And so let me switch
Thing.
my camera now to be
Well, cool. So yeah, the distributed ledger section of it and how you feel about the future of it.
yeah, so we were my phone overheated, so we had to reset the recording and I switched from the phone camera to the iMac camera and we're back. So continuing the train of thought, hopefully we're able to squash these together and they sound about the same. So if you're listening, I think you'll be able to stay with us so far. This is what I get for trying to record a podcast in Arizona in February, but it's hot outside and the sun's intense. The Bitcoin is a force for good and people should have the option to store wealth over time in a self-sovereign way. It's like, I mean, what is, and this is getting like way off track in terms of the conversation, and that's kind of the danger of talking about Bitcoin is it just tends to do that to conversations. The
Sure.
It either extends them or ends them because someone's just like not interested at all. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
can you have a way to store, value, wealth over time, independent of any government? I think that that is an option people should be able to have, and that is what Bitcoin enables. Now, crypto refers to an entire like category, which is humongous, right? As big as software. It's like, is software good? Is the internet good? Or like, it's as big of a question. It's just like, well, some software is bad. Some software's led to bad things, and some,
So I guess
right?
the
It's like,
spread within your understanding of what could apply to crypto. Because sometimes I've
yeah, and
asked
that's
this
kind of why
question to
I
people in the
limit the
industry.
question to
Yeah.
Bitcoin, right? Because it's like Bitcoin
Okay, good, good,
specifically,
good.
in my opinion, is a good thing.
Awesome. That's good. So
Yeah.
you transitioned from that experience into your data company, and so I'm interested in your experience between the data company and also now the pivot into the marketing company. And I'm curious about two things for both of them. And the first one is, what was your experience growing? I mean, you talked a little bit about the average time from inception of conversation to close, but I'm curious about what types of tactics did you use to try and gain traction in that data business before you made the pivot?
You open the conversation up with cold email, did a lot of cold email.
Nice.
This varying degrees. So again, it started a lot of conversations, and then those
Okay.
conversations just took a long time to like materialize into deals.
We found success with
But
that. We're starting the
we
conversation
found
with cold
success.
email.
Exactly.
Sure.
And again, this is
Okay.
2022. A lot cold email is a
Sure.
lot easier then.
Yeah, right.
And the cold email is a lot easier then. What and I still do cold email present day. But what is the cold email is a game of getting someone's attention. How do you get someone's attention? Right. Point out, either present them with some opportunity that's like relevant and exciting, or point out some problem that they have. Like, hey, is this a problem that you have? If so, I've fixed it. And they're like, oh, well, that is interesting. And so with data, it's things like, how do you manage? We at first were doing a lot of dashboards specifically for marketing agencies to help them do the reporting for all of their clients. Because you have to demonstrate to them, like, hey, here's what we're doing for you, and here's the results it's generating, so that they choose to renew with you as an agency.
Also, just some context. So you said it's sister slash parent company. You guys are still running this business, or you
That's
pivoted
right.
completely into. Okay, so you're
We
still
still
doing.
run this
Gotcha. So you
business.
still serve. Beautiful. Okay, awesome. So you're saying cold email, your first vertical, or your main type of client with marketing companies creating dashboards for them to better serve their client base.
To better serve their clients and better communicate the value of their services to their clients.
Gotcha. Cool.
And so
Cool. Cool.
that's
Cool.
that's how we got some, and then the other was doing directly to the end customer, because we're not building dashboards for the agencies, we're building dashboards for the agency's clients. So for an example would be like an e-commerce brand. They're running ads on Facebook, they have influencers creating videos on TikTok, they're selling products on Amazon, and we would build a dashboard of the performance of all those marketing channels and kind of the key insights and the KPIs that they need to know about. And also like not just product data, but also like B2B sales. So like you have a YouTube channel, you're getting leads from this traffic source, the ones that so CRM reporting, all that good stuff. And so we got deals either directly pitching agencies or on asking agencies to refer us, because a lot of marketing technology is really hard, especially on the data side, the attribution, the tracking. And so people would just, kind of prospecting for referral partners was something we did early on as well, where people would like have things they would set up for the clients, then it would reach a certain level of sophistication that was out of the depth of the traditional. Like if you're a marketing agency, most marketing agencies don't have software engineers on staff. So they would like have freelancers on Upwork that were not super reliable, that maybe didn't speak English super well, that just not a good situation. So we came in and we're like, we're super competent, we're priced at a reasonable amount. And so they would refer us complicated data projects as well. That's how we pretty much got started. And then I haven't really done business development for that business at all since starting the newsletter business. And most of the
Okay,
growth has
gotcha.
just come on the back of, yeah, just retention and referrals in the
Awesome.
data
So
business.
so at the beginning it's cold email to get those first couple of clients, and then after you got the first couple of clients, mainly referral. That's pretty awesome.
And then
That means you guys are
I'll
doing
say,
good stuff.
that's right. We're very good at the data stuff. The
Yeah,
other aspect, which I just think it would be a dishonest telling of the story to exclude, is
sure.
I was a member of Client Ascension. If you're familiar with them, they are a mastermind community of agency owners. And it's like, I joined November of 2022. I paid a sum of money to be a part of the group for a year. They have coaching calls like 20 times a week with different experts and different aspects of growing a marketing agency or growing really any business to business service agency, which we were in the same category of. And just by being an active participant in this community of business owners led to a lot of opportunity for us, just by like meeting people who knew of us as the people who could solve hairy things, especially related to like Google Analytics, because that's just an issue for so many other marketing agencies is doing that correctly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also, I mean, you can make the argument that it's not something that's long-term sustainable or scalable, but I mean, that is a really legitimate growth channel. Joining some type of network or community, learning from people, but also talking about, exchanging business services.
Absolutely. And it's something that, we have in the newsletter business gotten a lot of referrals from people who are in mastermind communities. So it's like one guy's in a mastermind community and everyone needs what he does. And then what we do complements what he does. So we're just like getting referrals from him, but all of his business is coming in because he's an active participant in a mastermind community. So it's
Right.
totally viable. Again, I've
Okay.
been trying to like
So,
build more predictable lead gen systems.
right, right, right.
Because I don't know if you can sell the business by being like, yeah, so like, and I'm not trying to sell anytime soon, but like thinking in terms of like, do you have a business or do you have like if you were to look on paper, like what does a robust business look like? It's not like, well, the founder's in the mastermind and like because he's a lot of friends in that group, he just kind of gets clients pretty often.
Right.
Versus like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, it's like he has a sales team. When you call this type of lead with this type of script, you get interested leads, and then you send them this document, they get on the phone. Like that's not a process, right? It's a great way to
Right,
go from
right.
0 to 1, but from one to the next step, I don't want to just like join a bunch of masterminds and like make a bunch of friends and hope that it's like a hope strategy versus a
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we here made it to the orbit marketing. And it's cool that you just expressed that you guys are in a state of figuring out what that process is for you. And so just like we did for the data analysis types of growth tactics that you guys use, so I just wanted to go through the same things, and it could turn into like a discussion of ideas or opinions, because you guys are still testing things. So you did mention that you are still doing cold email for the email marketing, and then you have a heavy amount of referrals. So I don't, is there more to add on top of like what referrals or cold email looks like specifically for your marketing company at the moment?
The principles are the same, right? And this isn't like anything groundbreaking, right? Like sales and marketing is so simple theoretically, right? Simple doesn't mean easy. Simple just means like easy to grasp conceptually. It's like make people aware of of that you exist, and then get them from awareness to conversion. And there's just a lot of different ways to do that. And so you can play the game of like, well, let's make cold people completely cold aware of us. Cold email. How do we build trust and nurture them and kind of take them on a buyer's journey? Then there's getting like super warm people, which is like deliberately seeking out referral partners. Like if you, for example, run Facebook ads to grow email newsletters, maybe those people are tired of writing it and they just want to hire us to write the newsletter. So it's like, hey, if any of your clients are looking for a writer, let me know. And those people already have a high degree of trust with the vendor, so they make the introduction and it's like a much easier sale. And then obviously there's podcasting as the lead channel, which is like, we mentioned this. I've been
Oh,
doing my
yeah.
podcast for coming up on 5 years, and that's just been in the first year and a half of this business, we've really not been as concentrated on one particular customer archetype as I would like us to be. But that's because like it's in discovery. It's not like I had a background where it's like I've grown a gazillion masterminds 100% by starting newsletters. It's like no, like the premise and the insight's like or what I say with the utmost humility, but the insight's just like every business should have a presence over email, and most just neglect it. And so on that one premise is like the whole thesis of our business was like every business has, again, back to like sales and marketing, what I just said a moment ago. It's just a matter of like how many people are aware of what you do, and then how do you get them from awareness to buying. And there's different ways to do that, but you want to, you know everyone's heard know, like, and trust. It's not a bulletproof mental model. It's not the only mental model, but it's a functional, useful model for thinking about sales and marketing. So if a sale occurs when someone knows you, likes you, and trusts you, how do you build familiarity, rapport, and trust? Right? Well, you build a newsletter, an email, like an email newsletter is a great way. Consistent, repeated exposure, right? That is familiarity comes from repeated exposure. So you show up in their inbox once a week. Rapport, getting someone to like you, is a good way to do that is like being useful to them. So like being helpful. So if, for example, I'm like a coffee enthusiast and in your newsletter every week you teach me about coffee and you've taught me how to make better coffee, how to get cheaper coffee, like the same quality in a cheaper way, to how to avoid these mistakes when it comes to making coffee, how to have more fun, like whatever it is, you've genuinely been useful to me, right? Like you've taught me something, you've made my life better. So now I like you because you've made my life better. And trust, right? It's like a lot of the way that people build trust with people is by delivering on their promises. And so I make a promise. In this email, I'm going to teach you something every week that's super interesting or valuable. Then by delivering on those promises, and I'm like showing you that I'm trustworthy. And so a newsletter is a good way for businesses to, create that know, like, trust with their prospects. And I think I've gone like 2 or 3 threads too deep to remember how I got on this point. So maybe you can help me out. But the point is that's the value of a newsletter. Oh, so we don't have a clear customer profile in terms of like who exactly we work with, besides like every business needs this thing. And because of that, the podcast, I've made my way back to the top. Through the podcast, I've met a lot of business
Nicely done.
owners. through the podcast, I've met a lot of business owners, and I just like say to them, like not in a salesy way, because like in this conversation, right? Oh, what do you do? I do newsletters. What do you do? Oh, I do marketing for coffee. Okay, great. Oh, now we know that about each other. You go, oh, newsletters. Like just so many business, like back to the core insight, so many business owners neglect email that just by me existing and like appearing competent and human and real, and just like having a level of familiarity from doing a podcast where we've had a conversation, I'm like clearly a real person. Like, oh, we should talk because we're not doing anything with our email list and we should be. Like that's where all the business comes
Sure.
from. But I go to a run club, I go to a networking event, etc.
Yeah, so more about from your experience with the newsletter email. Obviously, you've done a lot of it, and I'm curious how much an approach to, I mean, you mentioned that any company could benefit or will benefit from a presence over email. So, how much does it vary given the type of business, to what degree they should be investing in an email, a weekly newsletter, or is it monthly that's better for some people, or like twice a week, um, does it depend on the type of company or is it something else?
Yeah, there's a level of sophistication that will inform the strategy as well as just do you have an angle, right? Is there something worth saying every week related to what you do? So do
Does
you have
everybody, yeah, I'm just saying it, like, if you think about it hard enough, does everybody have something specific to say? Like, is it applicable
yeah,
to
I mean, I
everyone?
think everyone has the potential to. Just some people are
Okay,
more, there's more mental gymnastics than others, right? Some's like a layup. So if you sell like financial advising or like you sell like a day trade, like you sell, let's say a course on how to become a day trader, right? You probably have something worth saying every single day. It's like, here's my opinion of a good trade today. Like, that is a good piece of content. That's a high value concept worth talking about daily versus like your potential customers are probably actually interested in that every single day versus, I'm trying to think of like something else. Like, we work with an attorney who helps people with estate planning. Like, I don't really know what we're going to say 7 days a week. Like, you need an estate. You should have an estate plan. You should have a
right.
will. Like, here's the benefits of that. Like, probably not. Like, we're saying, maybe to sponsor some newsletters. You have to, again, this is back to the simplicity of marketing. Just reverse engineer the customer journey and like think about the relationship you want to have with them. It's no different, right? Like sales relationships, everyone kind of makes the parallels. They call it like between like dating and sales, or like kind of very similar. Like people make metaphors between them all the time. And like think about the stage of the relationship you're in with someone that you're dating, or like any regular friendship. Like, do you and that friend have a reason to, like, there are friends you text every day, and there's a reason why you text them every day, right? And there's people that like there's not a reason for you to touch base every day. There's people that you keep in contact with once a month, right? Just based on like the strength in for the relationship and like the things that you have to talk about. Is there something that like, so for example, I talk to my business partners every single day. What do we talk about? The day to day of the business, right? I talk to like, friends who are like loose acquaintances, maybe like once a quarter. And it's just like, here's a quick, brief life update from the past quarter. What's up with you? So it's just, what's the nature of the relationship, right? What's your end game?
Is it useful? Like, how specific does a particular business get with segmenting their email list? Is it useful to do that from zero, from jump, or is it only useful to do that at a certain level of scale with your
Yeah,
audience?
it's kind of one of my, and I'm not the guy who like invented this saying, but like every single marketing channel works. Where it's just like, is it worth doing the amount of effort required to make it work? So in theory, you should do everything, but theory and reality are two different things. So it's like pick a simple thing, like the best format and the best cadence is the one that you can stick with. So, how much does your product cost? What are your conversion rates? How much do your conversion rates improve by, like someone asked me this on a sales call I had literally, an hour or two ago, was like, should we segment our list based on like political affiliation and write different content based on like the political affiliation? And I was like,
Interesting
well,
question.
what kind of content were we going to talk about? Like, is it like it would probably be better, but is it like this? It's some of these questions are so contextual to the situation, where it's like it might make sense if you have like a million people, right? So again, let's say it makes a 10% improvement to a 10% lift in conversion rates, and you send it to a million people. So an extra 10%, and so your conversion rate is currently 10%, which means you're converting 100,000 people. So a 10% improvement is an extra 10,000 conversions. If every conversion is worth, let's go with $10, right? So this is worth you will make an extra $100,000 by doing this. The cost of doing it is, I don't know, let's say an extra 2 hours of effort per week. The person who does this is paid $50 an hour. So for you to spend an extra $100 a week, you will make an extra $100,000 a year from this strategy. That in that situation, this seems like a good investment. Versus like what you said, I've got two subscribers, right? It's going to be worth $100, and the expected value is like negligible. So it's just like, what are the unique circumstances we're faced with? And obviously projections you can't always do perfectly, but like that's the
Cool.
napkin math of the situation at least.
That's a very interesting insight. What I'm curious about now is you said you've been personally interested in being an entrepreneur for a long time, and you have a strong why, and the what wasn't as important as the why was for a long time. So one of your recent posts, it might have been your most recent post, was about reflecting um,
Hmm,
on
that
2024.
was recent.
And so I have two questions, and the first one is more about like lifestyle habit activity, and the second one is more specific to wherever you want to take that reflections post. The first one, when I see a newsletter, when I see somebody with as much activity as you have, like I think to myself, like, oh, I'd love to have a relationship with writing that is that consistent. I mean, with a bunch of AI tools and automations and stuff, I'm not familiar with how much of that is automated, but there's still some degree of personalization that you have to put into it. Like AI just can't write everything for you, or you're not putting out high quality content. So how do you find it, or maybe how did you come to prioritizing your relationship with writing or content creation to such an extent that you put out stuff so frequently, uh, and to a point where you can, advise other people on doing it themselves? So yeah, I'm curious about your specific relationship with content creation and writing.
One point is that it's, easier to, I'm not that prolific on different, there's like, there's several angles to this. So one is like, have you reduced the amount of effort it takes to continue to do the thing, right? So for me to like talk incessantly is actually, and maybe anyone listening to this like could reason this on their own, not difficult for me. Like I talk.
Okay.
Like my brain's good at producing words. I don't know if they're good
Okay.
words, but like it in terms of like using my mouth to make sound, I do a lot of that when prompted. And so that last piece of content was like I wanted to reflect on 10 things I learned last year, got a piece of paper, very quickly came up with 10 lessons, like very quickly, just because like I've had a lot of, I feel like I learned last year. I did a lot of things, I learned a lot. And then
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
talked for 45 minutes, right? So like the whole exercise took like 50 minutes, 5 minutes of brainstorming, 45 minutes of yapping. And then I did ask an AI the goal with the email was just like to say, here's the video I made, and here's the 10 main points. And so then I already wrote out the 10 bullet points. Then AI gave me a one sentence summary for each one, which I just like edited. Because it wasn't like the post wasn't really about anything other than like, here's the video, here are the chapters, right? So it's not like
Sure.
I felt like I needed to like say anything meaningful in the promotional copy. It was just like the video was the product, the promotional copy was the promotional copy. And then I mean, that's the first post on my Substack in months, besides promoting some, in-person events I was hosting, which again were purely promotional. We're just like, hey, I hosted this event. It was really fun last time. Here's what some people had to say about it. Here's the information for the next one and why you should come. And then the podcast, I have a team. And then the format is also like our podcast promotional materials are really just like, I just published a new episode with this person. Here's a 2 sentence bio about them. These are the three main things we discuss. Here are the chapters, AI generated chapters. I edit the chapters to make sure they like, I feel like they accurately reflect what was discussed and like they sound coherent, and that's it. And then I have an editor, and so I have people that help me with those things, an assistant. So that's like one part of it. And then the other one's just like, I have things to say, right? Like I have passion about what I'm doing and enthusiasm for what I'm doing. And so there's no like friction. And then the other part, like you said, the why versus the what, like I've just deeply, deeply, deeply ingrained the belief that writing is very powerful. So I just said that interview with Dickie Bush. He's someone who I've like followed very closely online for 5 years, 4 years, 4 years, not five, 4 years. And he's just like someone I admire. Like he's like 3 years older than me. He makes a lot more money than I do. And I'm like, I want like whatever he's doing, I want to do. And he's like writing's important. So I just have the humility to be like, he's more successful than I am. He says this is important. It probably is. And that's not like I'm not going to apply that filter to everything because it's like I don't want to go run an OnlyFans agency because it's like, well, this guy
Yeah.
makes more money than me, and he says just be an OnlyFans creator. Um, you know, in a filtering for like an alignment of values, like Dickie's also in good shape. Seems like he has a well, has a good romantic relationship. So like he has like a good holistic lifestyle. So I'm like he's successful in the way I want to be successful. This is what he says. So I'm gonna like adopt that.
So when, at whatever point you decided to ingrain that, how did you translate that into, your life? Is it like a consistent habit? Is it daily? Like, is it weekly? Like, how did you set it up in a way that you were like, okay, I am engaging in this ingrained belief now?
So I started with the I started my Substack in I don't know, let's say like October of 2022. Sorry, October of 2020, 5 years ago. And I just
Okay.
said like let's publish one a week. And I just and sending it one a week and putting like all your friends and family on there, you kind of
I
feel
just
the
did it.
pressure to like actually deliver, right? And then like this was like 2020, so like there wasn't as much to do. Not that I like believed in the whole COVID thing really, but still like there was just less going on. And so I just Sunday nights would write this thing. And again, like it same original point, right? It felt important for the why of like I've seen so many entrepreneurs come before me that have personal newsletters, and it seems like it's an important part of why they're successful. Therefore, I should have one. Therefore, the work required in doing something that feels value aligned is quite easy because it
Okay,
feels
cool.
important.
Cool. And
Now,
so
present
then it
day,
just, right.
well, let me make this one point really quick because it's going to really make sense
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
really
asking about.
quick.
So
Oh, okay, okay. Present
yeah.
day, what do I sell? Right? I sell newsletters. I'm like, your life as a business owner will be better if you have a newsletter. And so I can't say that and then not do it. Like, because then it's like, do I not believe it? Well, it's like, well, I'm too busy. Well, it's like, well, you have a whole team of newsletter writers. Why aren't they writing your newsletter? Oh, well, it's too much effort. It's like, well, what do you mean it's too much effort? Like, well, if it's going to be too much effort for you and they're your employees, like they're
Definitely.
certainly not, you know what I mean? So it's like if I can't make it work for us, then what's the impression that's setting to the market? So it's like we need to be the beacon of like not only do we say this is really good, but we do it and it's freaking awesome. And it is because it's like, I get emails every time I send a newsletter. Every time I send my personal newsletter, I get an email from like people who I haven't talked to in months. They're like, this was helpful. Thanks. Like people come out of the woodworks. And then every time I send a company newsletter,
Nice.
someone replies and says like this was helpful, like I hadn't thought about that. I'm like, oh, what am I
That's
doing?
cool.
I'm like nurturing, and I'm seeing like people who are in the CRM that are ignoring me that I've like sent a follow-up email to that's like, hey man, you had some interest in our stuff, you want to talk? And then they go cold and I stop following up with them, and then I see they're on our newsletter and they're opening and they're clicking links. So I'm like, okay, like that's someone I should actually reach back out to. And it helps me discern who's like actually a truly cold lead who's lost interest and maybe someone who's just like busy, like who is.
Right, right.
And so it's just valuable. And so it's way, 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 if there's like a hierarchy, it's like, great, hey, we got this client, ROI, made money, made sales, great, believable. But it's like, no, like we do this. This was the sale that wasn't going to happen. This is something that the newsletter did that I can point to with my finger. And so it just adds another layer of authenticity to the
Yeah.
sale.
Cool. Well, related to what you'd already brought up, which was the last post that you did. So I like to end these conversations with something that inspires you, something that inspired you recently. It could be really small, it could be existential, it could be huge, but I think it ties in well with the idea of reflection and the ideas that you put on your last post. So I will prompt you with the question, what's something that is inspiring to you? And feel free to use an example from your last post if you want.
Thinking a lot about that.
Oh, thanks.
What's that?
So thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like something inspiring to me. I'm like, I feel like there's got to be some specific example.
I mean, I am curious if there's anything that you reflected on that was particularly inspiring.
Mm. I'm not like stumped by this, but the question of like who are your role models, right? That's kind of like I'll say like Dan Martell, someone I really admire a lot. So I really admire Dan Martell and I really admire Russell Brunson. Back to pictures of success in the way that I want to be successful. They're both married, they both have kids, they're both running their businesses, they both present as high energy, very happy. And then Dan's very fit, and I think Russell's still very active and fit as well. So it's like a good holistic picture of success. And then and they both also do a lot of charitable work as well. They both do a lot of like giving back. And so like very I don't know like if either of them are religious. Russell's a Mormon, so I guess he is, but like looks good. Looks like a good total package. And so some of it just like, well, if they do this, I do this. I should do this, right? So one's like, okay, so I'll give one example specifically. Um, One was just the interview I did with Dickie Bush again. So I caught up with him. I
That's
interviewed him
awesome.
originally in 2021, and then I interviewed him again this year. And it's like, why is he there? Because he followed the advice he gave me 4 years ago, right? He's like, he kind of like called a shot. He's like, I'm gonna write every day, and it's gonna be make me really successful. 4 years later, he's been writing every day, way more successful than he was then. So that was really inspiring. And then uh, a few shout outs. I have a friend, Sean Allard, who has a local newsletter in Phoenix about how he's building his business behind the scenes. And he talks about how rewarding it is in terms of the deal flow he gets for like small business acquisitions and the like exclusive access it gets him for invitations to events. So it's like, I got to pick up my newsletter again, my personal one, because I kind of let it fall off. I've been sending the business one. And then, so that inspired action. Then there's someone I interviewed recently named Nathan May, who runs a similar agency to us, right? He's like more full service, like newsletter marketing, consulting, paid ads, like everything, everything. And his personal newsletter is really good. So just like seeing people who are like doing well at the things I want to be doing well at. Like you don't I read a book recently. Have you heard of Focus Mate? This is the long story and I'll make it short. Have you heard of Focus Mate?
No,
Is the short question. FocusMate
no.
is a website that lets you do virtual co-working. So it's like you work from home, you're alone, you want to just like get on a
Interesting.
Zoom call with someone and just like chat and be like, hey, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna work on this. Okay, what about you? I'm gonna work on this. Okay, great. You put yourselves on mute, then like 45 minutes later, you talk about it. On FocusMate, I met this author of a book called Richer, Wiser, Happier. And it sounded like whatever about the title, but I like downloaded a sample, ended up reading the whole book and it was really good. It was like what we can learn about health, wealth, and happiness from the world's greatest investors. So it's like Warren Buffett and John Franklin Templeton. I think I messed up his name, but John Templeton, and so like some really like Jack Bogle from Vanguard. It's like several really high profile people, several lesser known people. First chapter of that book is all about emulating, like shamelessly, shamelessly, shamelessly emulating. And like Dickie has what I want, I'm going to copy what he does, right? Nathan has what I want, I'm going to copy what he does. Sean has what I want. I'm going to copy what he does. Put my own flavor on it, sort of. Like I'm not writing, I'm writing, he's writing a here's my personal life updates and bullets newsletter. I'll just send a here's my life updates, bullets newsletter. So, and again, there's like a layer of like, you can't do everything, but I reached that critical. There's like, I think it was like a famous, I'm going to take the word famous back. There was a podcast that the founder of Lululemon did on how I built this that's probably published in like 2018. And he basically told the story of like when you hear the same thing 3 times in the same week and like different unrelated circumstances that like that means something. And so like I don't know, maybe hear like about spandex or yoga, like maybe heard like 20 people in Canada talk about yoga in the same week and he's never heard about it, then he heard about it 20 times in the same week. It's like clearly this yoga thing's a thing. And so I just had enough like I was hit over the head with the same idea so many times, and you could call it the hand of God, you could call it selection bias, like whatever. Enough people like it just finally got through my thick skull. That's like, dude, like you got to get your newsletter back online. So inspired by that, the power of copying. Those are some ideas that light me up. Even Charles too,
Cool.
the guy who put us in contact. I love Charles and his newsletter.
Yeah,
Like,
I
why do I talk
agree,
about
man.
Charles all the time? Because I see his newsletters all the time. That's why I talk about him all the time. Because he's in my
That's a good
inbox all the
point.
time. So I'm always thinking about him.
Look at that. Hey, man, that was a really nice way to bring that back to everything else that we're talking about. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk, man. You didn't have to do this, you did. So, and I learned a lot. I mean, I have a lot of personal interest in the concepts behind email marketing, the concepts of building a list, and there's a lot of consistency ingrained in that. And I think I value consistency as well. And so that tactic for me is really personal. It was cool to hear about your journey with cold email. Obviously, given the sponsor, I'm interested in different people
Heck yeah.
with that. Super cool about your podcast. How can people find you if they want to?
Yeah. On LinkedIn, I'm Louis Shulman. I pretty much talk about everything there. My newsletter
Awesome.
is louisshulman.substack. The business's newsletter is newsletter.orbitmarketing. Louis Shulman on Google usually leads to me and the channel that people are most interested in. And if what I say to people is like everyone gets a lot of stupid emails that are like spammy, so don't answer every email I get. But if you say, I listened to Blake's podcast, I'd be like, oh, a real human is reaching out for a reason. And I will answer that, right? If it's just like, I don't know who you are. It's like I get a lot of DMs that I can't answer because I'm like, who are you? What do you want? But if you say something like, I found you on Blake's podcast, like, a real human who wants to talk. I always have time for that.
Nice. Hear that, everybody? If you're reaching out to Louis, drop my name.
Exactly.
And it'll get you in the door. Awesome, Louis. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, man. That's all we got.
Thank you, Blake.
You have an awesome
Much
day out there,
appreciated.
right? Stay cool.
I know. In this heat of winter.
That's right. All right, bye.
So
Hey, thank you so much, man.